Hello everyone, this is Edgar for Team Lotus Box, and today I have an arena video for you all. I'm going to be playing the Temur deck that a lot of the team has been working on this week. Zan top 8'd the Lotus Fox Patreon Championship last week, beating Collins in a mirror match in the win-in, and then Collins, myself, and Abe all qualified for the MTQ Together Grand Prix this weekend, hosted by Counter Fireball, by winning one of the qualifiers with this deck. So we've been doing pretty well. We've all been working on it, and I kind of like where it is in the metagame right now. Um, the way that I have the deck built right now is a little bit different than the way some of the other guys have it built. Just trying some different things. Some of the major changes that we've made is we've started incorporating more 2-mana ramp into the deck. Um, I'm opting to try Paradise Druid here. I've tried Wolf Willow Haven. It has some better synergy with Wilderness Reclamation, and um, that can come up in some games, but I have found that the Paradise Druid is a little bit better at combating the things that are good against you, namely Teferi. On the draw, Teferi is really good against, or rather, when you're on the draw, Wolf Willow Haven is really bad against Teferi. And I kind of want to minimize the impact of that card, so opting for the Paradise Druid, and of course it does fix your mana a little bit better than the Wolf Willow Haven does, which can come up in some of the games as well. Another one of the changes that I've been trying out is playing more copies of Brazen Barter, and I've opted to completely remove Bone Crusher Giant from the deck. The reason that I wanted to do that is because I really wanted to maximize how good the card Frilled Mystic was in games where you don't draw Wilderness Reclamation, because it can be really awkward sometimes to have this 4-mana counterspell up. It can be fairly telegraphed, especially with open deck lists, and oftentimes your opponent can jockey around it. So by maximizing the amount of instant speed interaction or instant speed threats that you have between Brazen Borrower and Nightpack Ambusher, you really got to take advantage of your opponent trying to jockey around Frilled Mystic. So something I'm trying out, and also the deck can struggle sometimes to just beat Resolve Permanence, and I'd never really found that Bone Crusher Giant was the card that was really catching me up in those spots. Stuff like Mayhem Devil or Witch's Oven, Resolved Planeswalkers sometimes could prove troublesome, and just being able to bounce it and then counter it on the way down with Thrilled Mystic, Thassa's Intervention, Mystical Dispute, whatever it may be, can be a really big way to regain parity or pull ahead of a game that you're behind in. Speaking of the counter magic, opting for 2 copies of Mystical Dispute in the main deck as well. Just a very powerful counter spell. Quite the blowout when it's good, and even gets us a 3-mana leak against the non-blue decks is serviceable game 1, and then of course you can board it out after board. But besides that, it's just the regular old Temur Flash deck. You have the Wilderness Reclamation Expansion Explosion package, which can really take over some long games. But oftentimes you just play Nightpack Ambusher, have Frilled Mystic up the next turn, and then you can take over the game that way. 2 copies of Uro. Card I have not actually been too impressed with in this deck. I do think that the card is important against the Black-Red Sacrifice deck, so I think you need a couple copies, but definitely lower on that card than I was initially. It can be a little bit awkward against the card Claim the Firstborn, since you don't really have that many high impact targets for that card, so by the time you end up escaping Uro, it's fairly likely that they have access to that in order to blow you out. But as long as they don't have an oven as well, and your life total is fairly stable, which is more likely since you've cast Uro at least twice, um, you can usually win from those board states. It can just be a little bit awkward sometimes. Um, The only other difference in the main deck that I have been trying out is I'm playing a 3rd copy of Castle Vanquist, and again that harps back to the tension that I had with Frilled Mystic, where I wanted to really maximize this card in games where you didn't have access to a boatload of mana with Wilderness Reclamation. Um, and Castle Vanquish is another slightly lower impact but still high impact way to take advantage of your opponent trying to take advantage of your mana. Moving on to the sideboard, um, because I made the conscious decision to cut Bone Crusher Giant from my main deck, I needed to respect the aggressive decks a little bit more after board, so I have the full 4 copies of Scorching Dragonfire, which I think is the best removal spell you can play, just because of its relevance against the Black Red Sacrifice deck, just being able to hit the Midnight Reapers, hit the Cauldron Familiars. Sometimes you get Croxa in a pinch. It's the exile is obviously very relevant against that deck, and just maximizing as much as I can on 2 mana removal in a matchup where I believe just casting as many spells as possible is really important. Just making sure that you get your stuff onto the table, interact with your board, and by having a high density of 2 mana removal spells makes my expansion explosions less of a liability after board, since I'm capable of on 4 mana casting Scorching Dragonfire and forking it with expansion. Even in games where I don't have a lot of resources to cast explosion, you still get to take advantage of that. Uh, Another change we made is we added Shifting Ceratops to the sideboard, to help the blue matchups, help the Teferi matchups a little bit. Um, that in combination with the Fries has really gone a long way against the Bant decks, and really helped to swing that matchup a little bit. The Bant deck is really, it's a tricky matchup. I think we're slightly ahead, but it has a lot of play to it, and the Shifting Ceratops has really helped. But yeah, this is the deck I'm going to be playing today. I'm probably going to be running it this weekend in the Grand Prix. I don't really see myself playing anything else at this point. The deck has a lot of play to it. Certainly not my style. I haven't really played many Flash decks in the past, but it's been a lot of fun. So let's play some matches. I really like that the deck kind of has like this two-pronged attack to it, where people try to play slow against your flash plan. They don't want to get blown up by your counter magic, but then you have this really strong late game with the Wilderness Reclamation expansion explosion, obviously. So it can kind of be really difficult for them to attack you effectively through all that. This hand's great. It can be pretty difficult to mulligan basically any hand that has a turn 2 Growth Spiral. It's pretty clearly one of the more powerful cards in the deck, so definitely going to be keeping this one. Playing against either Bant or Blue-White. Oh, some sort of blink deck. Alright. This might be the Thassa deck that's been going around. I've been playing against that quite a bit. So if we hit a Reclamation or a Wolf in our top 2, we're going to be in a really good spot, and we hit the Wolf. So I gotta say go with the classic squeeze here of Nightpack Ambush or Frill Mystic. Opponent really isn't gonna have many good options here. I don't think this deck plays a lot of counter magic main deck. Teferi. Alright, I'm definitely gonna counter that one. And we drew in our land, which is really good because now we gotta keep up Nightpack Ambusher and Mystical Dispute for a possible second Teferi. Be an interesting question as to whether or not I'm supposed to ambush the Charming Prince if they attack. I think I will. The question comes down to whether or not I believe that there's two things. The first is whether there's a 4-mana white card that I care about, and I think the answer to that is no. That I would Mystical Dispute. I don't believe there's anything. And the second question is whether or not I think that they have main deck Mystical Disputes of their own. Because if I ambushed here, They could go to Fairy with Mystical Dispute back up. Um, I one don't think that's very likely, and two, even if they have that, it's actually not that bad for me, since they'll have to bounce, and then I can kill with Frilled Mystic, so I think it's worth doing this. Hopefully they don't have a white card to punish me, and they don't. And then we're 7, make a 3/3. They're dead next turn. We don't have a counterspell up this turn, but they're going to need a pretty good card here. One of the best cards they could have for sure, but not that big of a deal. I am just going to fire this off for 1. We have another one, and we kind of just want to find another high impact card, another counterspell, Wilderness Reclamation, just anything to keep the ball rolling. So I think I'm just gonna, they're gonna be able to proc this, so I'm gonna just do this right now. Just draw another 2 cards. Again, we have another expansion. We have a lot of good cards we can hit, and we're gonna have lethal next turn. Okay, so they're gonna gain 2 life here, 3 life rather. And we drew an arrow, which is pretty decent. So we could go for lethal here, and I think I will. Again, I really don't think this deck plays a lot of counter magic in the main deck, or any counter magic in the main deck rather, and they certainly haven't had any of this game so far. They would have had to have drawn a last turn, and they didn't have it. Alright, perfect. So an easy game. We drew pretty well that game. Obviously, we had Gross Spiral into 4-drop, and the Mystical Dispute ended up being pretty game-changing, as we had drawn up. So post forward. Their Teferi Elspeth Conquers Death deck. Elspeth Conquers Death is actually a really problematic card sometimes, but really powerful against Shifting Ceratops, which happens to be part of our sideboard plan against these blue decks, but it's not too big a deal. It is still a 5-mana threat. One card we were considering trying was copies of Quench. Opted for Mystical Dispute main deck instead, but could definitely see Quench just because it's a cheaper piece of interaction against non-blue spells. So I like the other disputes. I like the fries. The Shifting Ceratops I'm not sure about. They have Charming Princes. If they get 2 of those into play, they will be able to block. They also have Elspeth Conquers Death, so I'm not sure how much it's actually worth it. I do want to shave down on the cards that are not as effective against Teferis, so I want to shave down on copies of Wilderness Reclamation. Probably just 1 copy and 1 copy of Expansion. You kind of want to go down on this package a little bit, and 1 copy of Frilled Mystic. Seeming like a little random here, but you really just don't want to get bogged down on too many copies of this cards because it could lead to your opponent being able to take advantage of your draw. And probably 1 more copy of either Rec or Expansion. I really just want to play like a normal Flash game and then draw like just 1 copy of either of these cards in the late game. You really don't need access to a lot of them. Alternatively, I could cut an Uro as well. They have Deputy of Detention, they have Teferi. It can be pretty difficult to get this set up, and a lot of their removal is exile based as well, so I think I'll go down to 1 copy of Uro actually. Not sure if that side already submitted. I was too distracted talking, but hopefully it did. Alright, a solid hand here. It's a little clunky, but if we draw any land, we have 2 Thassa's Interventions to help out. And we do have the Mystical Dispute for their Teferi on turn 3. Really like Brazen Borrower in these matchups, so it really lets you kind of dictate the pace of the game. Expansion, not the best draw there. Letting you clear the board or end step just a 3-1, forcing them to act is kind of a big deal sometimes. Second copy of Fibble Tip. Oh, and they missed a land drop. So we'll play this untapped. If they do nothing, I will certainly play this borrower, and it's exactly what I was talking about, where now I'm ahead on board, and they need to react to me, and if they ever do, I get to resolve a really powerful punish. Charming Prince. They're missing land drops. They're going to blink this. But they don't get the card right now, since it comes back on the end step. Might just be worth it for me to play Brazen Borrower, but then I'm behind on the clock. They have 3 points to my 3 points. I think I will just counter this. Not the best use of my counter spell, but good use of my mana. If I draw a land, I'm going to be in good shape anyways. Didn't draw the land, but that's fine. They drew a land. Right. They just said go here. I'll play Brazen Borrower. Now I have initiative. Head on the race, so they have to react to me. If I draw a land, I'm going to be able to punish them pretty hard here. So I'm going to play Thassa's Intervention here just because it's the clunkier counter spell. I think even the 3 mana mode on Mystical Dispute will be good this game, just because my opponent is choked on mana. And perfect, we draw a land. So we are in really good shape now. Since we're going to be able to play Wilderness Reclamation, keep up Nightpack Ambusher, keep up Mystical Dispute. So they could have their own Mystical Dispute here. I can dispute and they can't counter back. Or I could just play Ambusher. They bounce my Brazen Bar or plus, and I can't deal with this, so I won't be able to kill the Teferi, so it's going to be a little bit too awkward for me, I think. So I'm just going to play Mystical Dispute here. Really want to keep this card off the table as much as you possibly can. So I could play a second Wilderness Rug here, but I don't really take advantage of the mana in any way. Since I want to keep up Nightpack Ambusher, so I'm just going to play Uro. This sets up for a better next turn, but Uro, if it hits a land, also sets up for a better next turn, so I'm just going to do that instead. It looks like they do have the Mystical Dispute we were talking about. They opted to go for the Uro, which is totally fine by me. So Elspeth Conquers Death here would be annoying, but not too worried about much of anything else. And they're gaining life with their Charming Prince. Interesting. Alright. So they have something here, Aether Gust. Alright, I'll put that on top, that's fine. How many cards do I have in my yard? So I need one more card in my graveyard to escape this Uro. So I'll just play. Yeah, I'll just play Wilderness Wreck, and I'm not actually going to. So I could play Nightpack Ambusher and then untap my lands again, and then I have 4 mana open, but don't really think that's worth it because if they had Shatter the Sky, it would have been really annoying. They have Deputy here for my Rex, which is pretty annoying for me actually. A little bit of a punish, but I am still just going to be able to play this Night Pack Ambusher, and now my opponent can't really ever Wrath because they kill their own deputy. So I'm not afraid at all of extending extra. Not going to cast my Paradise Druid, would rather get a Wolf. And then I'm going to instep this Growth Spiral and set up for the Euro the following turn. Might even expansion my Growth Spiral just to cycle it, get it out of my hand. It's being a little bit of a liability right now. But if my opponent ever has to chump away their deputy, it's going to be really important that I have this. So they were talking with Charming Prince. I could block with a Wolf. But if they have a way to deal with this, then I lose my Wolf. But if they have a way to deal with this, then my Wolf isn't very effective anyways. So yeah, so I think I'll block. So I'll respond to this with a Growth Spiral because I would rather hit a land, and I'm not going to fork it for the reason that I stated earlier. Also, forking it would be really bad against a Mystical Dispute. Yeah, just like that. Oh, but now I get to punish them really, really hard. So now I get to fork their Mystical Dispute and counter their Aether Gust. So huge blowout there from my opponent. And I get to eat their creature for free. And good game. Sweet. Quite a decisive victory there. Really showcased the power of Mystical Dispute in that match, just as a 1-mana counter spell just really, really swings games. Alright, and let's play another one. Oh, great hand. Again, turn 2 Growth Spiral. Really can't ask for much more than that. One of the hardest parts about this deck is when you have multiple counter spells, like we did in that last match, when we had Mystical Dispute and Thassa's Intervention, it's figuring out which ones you want to use first when you can use both. Really requires figuring out how the game is going to play out in the later turns, which can be really, really difficult. So here I have an interesting spot, actually. I could play Stomping Ground tapped, which would preserve my life total a little bit more. But since I have Growth Spiral and Mystical Dispute, if there's something I want to dispute on turn 2, and I play Fabled Passage on turn 1, I can go Stomping Ground, Growth Spiral, play this island untapped, and dispute it. But since I'm on the play, I don't think there's very much that I would dispute on turn 2. So I would rather preserve my life total against an aggressive deck, so I'm going to play Stomping Ground. If I was on the draw, though, I would definitely play this Fabled Passage because of the possible threat of my opponent having a turn 3 to Fairy. So it looks like I'm playing against the Sultai deck. This deck has been popping up more, and actually one of the things that could have punished me is a turn 2 Thought Erasure, which this deck plays 4 of. So perhaps an additional reason to play Fabled Passage on turn 1. A lot of these blue decks are playing Aether Gust in the main deck, so you kind of want to crack your Fabled Passage as soon as possible. Because one of the tricks with Aether Gust is if, let's say I played Forest this turn, played Ambusher, and then cracked this next turn, they could Aether Gust my Ambusher with the Fabled Passage activation on the stack, and then I'm forced to shuffle away my Ambusher, which is obviously not something that I basically ever want to do. So you wanna get these cracks out of the way when you can, and you don't really take advantage of the effects land in any way. Like you don't have any shuffle effects or any like brainstorm effects or anything like that. So it's okay to just use them. So we got to say go here. We have Mystical Dispute. This castle was actually a fantastic draw because it gives us something to do with our mana if we were to not need to cast this Mystical Dispute. But I will counter this Epic Downfall. Obviously, I want to keep my Wolf around. And I will play this and fetch right now. Again, so I don't get Aether Gusted. And also I want to get that last basic out of my deck before I draw it. And I will attack for 7 and say go, and I will probably be firing off an explosion for 2, although I may just scry, it depends on what my opponent does. Casualties 4. Okay, so I'm gonna get the scry while I can. I have a lot of really powerful cards that I could hit. Wilderness Reclamation is the best one, so I'm gonna keep that. Set a stop on my end step. So I have 2+6, 8 mana, so I could explosion for 4. I don't think that's worth it since it's just lethal next turn, so I'm just gonna wait. If they cast a discard spell, I will just fire this off for 2, obviously. Alright, and it looks like they're dead. I believe I can even play around Mystical Dispute here. Oh, but they don't even have a land, so. Play my land, set my stop, attack them. And 7/14, so it's explosion for 10. Obviously going for the max amount. Let's get some sick cards in your hand. Alright, so Salty deck has been popping up. It's quite interesting. It's a little bit clunky, so we got to take advantage of that a bit. Mystical Dispute is not the best card, or rather, there aren't that many uh, blue targets for it, but they do have like 6 mana green cards which you want to counter, and being able to hit Thought Erasure for 1 mana is a really huge deal. And obviously Aether Gust is going to be really good too. Lets you counter Nissa, lets you get Nissa off the board if it already resolved. Obviously really stellar. In terms of cards I don't want, I want access to this package, I think. I think Brazen Bar is pretty ineffective here. The chip damage is pretty difficult to be relevant. Not a lot of things you want to bounce. You do want to bounce Nissa sometimes, but you have Aether Gust for that. So I'm going to shave down on that. Uro is another card that isn't necessarily the best here. Trying to think of. They're gonna have they're gonna have a bunch of Mystical Disputes, which is the tension that we're trying to jockey around. I think shaving down on Uros is fine. And Frilled Mystic almost always gets worse after board. I usually go down to at least 3 copies of this in most matchups. So I could try this. Expansion's actually really good. Forking their Thought Erasure can be really powerful. Ooh, stellar hand here. I'm definitely going to keep this. Hand is a little bit weak to Thought Erasure just because of the way our lands sequence. I could play Steam Vents untapped on turn 1 in case they have it, and then I'll go Stomping Ground Druid, but then I don't have access to Ambusher, and I really want access to Ambusher. Yeah, you know what? This is pretty good. I think I'm gonna keep this. I think if they Thought Erasure me, it's gonna be not great, but these disputes are just still gonna be fine later on in the game. So. So they could have Aether Gust here, but that would be okay. I would put the Druid on the bottom though, I think. Yeah. I think I would rather just have regular lands at this point, and I want to say go with some disputes up and Thassa's Intervention next turn. Vraska. Alright, so I'm definitely going to counter this. The question is how. Intervention dispute. I have 2 disputes, which makes me lean towards casting one of those because having the options later is more powerful. But this one can be a lot clunkier. Let's say they play a land and a 3-drop next turn. Then I would have to cast this for 4 mana, but casting this for 4 mana versus 3 mana isn't very different in this stage. So I think I will Mystical Dispute. Also, I could cast this for the look at the top X mode, which is some upside for keeping that card in my hand. So they don't have anything here, so I'm gonna could just ambush. But if they have like an epic downfall or something, it's kind of annoying. But it's really not that bad, right? Because then I can just start scrying next turn, and if they don't have epic downfall, it's gonna be really, really good for me. And they don't have it, sweet. Okay, that's fine. I'll just put that on top, and I'll say go. Six mana. It's gonna be. It wouldn't be casualties. They wouldn't just kill one of my lands, right? Just killing my castle. Man, I really want this castle, but it feels so wrong to just use a counterspell on this. I mean, keeping my castle around lets me ambush with Gust up next turn. How relevant is that? I don't think it's relevant enough. I think I'm just gonna let this go. I'll go scry 2. Obviously, I'm gonna keep that ambusher, but see what the card underneath it is. And it's Wilderness Rex, so keep that one too. As much as I love scrying, I think fighting over that castle would be a grave error. Casting another casualties. Alright. Well, this one I'm obviously going to fight over because this one is getting my Wilderness Wreck as well. Again, the question is how. I could Aether Gust just as a really, really solid tempo play. Forces them to cast it again next turn, but I think I would rather save it for the utility. So I think now that I have access to a lot of mana, I think I'm just going to dispute this since I'm really not worried about the clunkiness of Thassa's Intervention anymore. And I'm just going to main phase this wolf, untap my lands, and really, really liking my spot here. Another casualties. Wow. Alright, so I really want to be able to look at the top X if I can, because I'm kind of short on gas. Well, not short on gas. I have this ambusher, obviously, but wouldn't mind having the option to do that. So I'm just gonna Aether Ghost this. I can always intervene it next turn if I don't draw anything. But if I draw like a dispute this turn or something, then I get to look at the top X and then dispute this on the way down. So I'm gonna set this up so I get my wolf. After I get my wolf, I'm going to play my second wolf. I'm going to tap my lands, and I think that should be enough. They're just going to recast his casualties here, and I'm gonna counter it. And that'll be it. Awesome. Alright, interesting hand. So we're on the draw, our opponent mulliganed. We don't have a growth spiral or a druid, and we have a lot of 4 mana plays, but we do have Wilderness Reclamation, which kind of declunks us a little bit. It lets us develop quicker, especially against non-counterspell decks. It really lets us turn the corner. I think that this hand is good enough. We get 3 looks at either a Paradise Druid or a Growth Spiral because of this temple, so I think I'm going to keep it. Definitely on the lower end. If we didn't have like exactly these 3, like if any of these were doubled, like we had 2 Rex, 2 Wolves, or 2 Mystics instead of one of the other ones, I think I would mulligan. But just the fact that like this is the hardest squeeze, right? When you go Reclamation and you hold up Frilled Mystic and Nightpack Ambusher, that is like the easiest way to catch up from behind. So I think it's worth keeping here. Don't want this. Really, really want to find a 2 mana ramp spell here. Opponent plays a Timret. Alright, so we didn't hit. That is fine though. We do get to play Uro as well. Another point to the opening hand is the fact that Uro, if we do fall behind Uro, at least it's going to gain us a little bit of life. So, and our opponent didn't have a 3-drop to kind of punish our slow start, which is really good for us. So I think we're going to be in a good spot here. So he's going to play Reclamation. No way for my opponent's seemingly mono black deck to interact with this. And honestly, a lot of these spots, like the game just already feels over, right? Um, we have Nightback Ambusher, we have Frail Bistic, we have Expansion Explosion. Gonna be really, really difficult. Like obviously my opponent's missing lands here, which is what's making this game easy. But even if they had played a 3-drop, then I still think I would have been in a good spot here. I could have not played this, because next turn I could play it with Frail Mystic backup, but I have these Expansive Explosions, so I guess really wasn't worried about that at all. Do another one anyways, so I'm just going to play this, untap my lands, keep the Frilled Mystic. And once you have Ambusher in play, you really just don't have to do anything else. You can just sit back, force your opponent to do something. Activating Temur Rec is not going to be good enough. I'm going to scry 2 here. Kind of want to land. And I'll keep. Alright, and they had enough. Wanted to land so that I could have a more powerful expansion, or explosion rather. Alright, so they played a Temur Rec and a drag. Drag seems to me like they're going to be mono black. Probably going to be pretty aggressive. Probably going to have like some gutter bones type stuff. So I think we're going to want at least the 2 mana removal. Get rid of the clunky counter spells. Want to keep access to this stuff. And get rid of a little bit of top end. I actually kind of want the Field Mystic. I think Brazen Burrow is probably not going to be that good. The question is, do I want Flame Sweep? I'm not sure if I'm going to want Flame Sweep. It's possible that their creatures are going to be stickier than that. And I don't really want to get rid of anything else here, I think. So I'm just gonna go with the Scorching Dragonfires, and then I'll reevaluate for game 3 if we see anything significantly different. All right, solid hand, I think. The mana is a little bit awkward. You never really want to have to fetch Mountain because it's so bad with Frilled Mystic, but obviously going to in this spot since I have to. We drew a second green source though, which is nice, since it's going to let us ambush her after playing Wilderness Reclamation on turn 4. And they're attacking our hand. If they take Scorking Dragonfire, I won't fetch the mountain, but if they don't take it, then I probably will. They took the Wreck, so I'm going to want to scry this turn, which means I want to fetch in order to preserve the scry, but I think I'm going to wait until my turn, because if I draw the mountain naturally, I can fetch a forest or an island to possibly have Frilled Mystic on turn 4. And there's no way I'm going to use the 1 mana, so I didn't draw it, but that's fine. No harm done. I'll fetch now. Got a forest here and scry. Definitely don't want another forest. Oh, I meant to get mountain there. I just confused myself, and that is really bad for me. Oh wow, huge mistake on my part. So apologies for that. So now we need to find a red source. I don't know why I got that forest. I really meant to get mountain, obviously. Don't. Okay. Now I have Nightpack Ambusher up. Could have bounced this, probably should have, but I accidentally skipped through the turn. Grey Merchant. That's fine. So I'm getting drained for a bunch, and they get a second to draw a card if they want. But I'm going to play Ambusher and start making some wolves. I wish I had that red source, I would have killed this Yara. Alright, we found the red source. Oh, I'm really sorry, everyone. I'm playing this game very poorly. I don't know why I main phase that growth spiral. I just missed out on a wolf for no reason. I guess I'm hanging back now. Obviously a couple silly mistakes there. But as long as you notice them, those are the type of mistakes that I'm usually less hard on myself for, because they're just blunders, and I know if I was like a little more focused, I wouldn't do those things. More interested in making sure that all my gameplay decisions are maximized. So I'm gonna kill the Ayara with this 9 on the stack. I don't want to give them the option to sack it if they want to. Also, I don't want them to get the free drain. Looks like they're gonna sack the Grey Merchant. Alright, I think I'm gonna get rid of it's either Brazen Borer or Growth Spiral. I think it's Brazen Borer though, just because I'd rather cycle into more lands, make this expansion explosion better. Not gonna have Growth Spiral main phase this time. I'm gonna opt to get my Wolf. They have 2 pump. Ooh, wow. Alright, so the Citadel's gonna mess me up. Jeez. I'm gonna get rid of Knight here. I know it's less devotion than the Fenlarker, but more concerned about it as a card in general. Could have expansion to, oh wow. Alright, well, I do get to fork this and kill their Nightmare Shepherd. But in a really bad spot here. Alright, just did this game. So perhaps could have won that if had I Dragon fired the Yara right away. That's alright, we have a game 3. They are a little clunkier than I thought. And sometimes when a non-blue deck is really clunky, you can try to keep a Mystical Dispute. Because it's like a 3-mana counter spell. But I don't think I want to do that. Glad I didn't have these Flame Sweeps. They are stickier than I thought they were gonna be. I could have more Brazen Borders just to pressure their life total, bounce Bullet Citadel in those late game spots, but I think this configuration is actually fine. Glad I kept in that 4th Frilled Mystic. Had a feeling it was going to be good. Just want to have a lot of gas in my deck for Agonizing Remorse. Alright, so I will opt to play first this game. Triple Fatal Passage, really, really awkward. Also, Dragonfire Mystic, awkward when I have to fetch Mountain. Really just don't like this hand at all, so I'm going to mulligan. Right, this hand is, it's better. I'm going to keep it. I'm going to put one of these Fables on the bottom, don't need the extra lands. And I want to find one of my good 4 drops. I will keep this though. Alright. Put on Whiffing on Duress is really, really good for us. Kind of undoes our mulligan a little bit. Oh, they kept a Wandlander. So I think I'm gonna, so I can shock myself in order to attack with Paradise Druid. Or rather, in order to have the options. It's like dealing 2 to myself in order to deal 2 to them. I could also just Brazen Borrower this turn. Really get the pressure on while they're stumbling on lands. I think I'm going to do that actually. So I'm just going to get in for 2 and start beating down. Alright, they hit their land. Because it's not like playing Ura this turn is really accelerating me to anything. I can cast any spell I draw. It is digging me deeper to a card, but not really too concerned about that. So I'm gonna get rid of one of these Fable Passages, and I'll just play a 3/1. I want to pressure their life total as much as I can, just to make Bull's Citadel as ineffective as possible when it does resolve. I'm playing the castle in case they have another Yarok's Fenlurker. Don't wanna lose that one. Alright, so they get the Ura out of my graveyard. Just fine. They're down a card on this exchange. Down a life as well. Alright. If I got a forest here, got plenty of blue mana. And there's no way for me to scry twice, so just play this, attack for 3, and say go. I'm going to set a stop my own upkeep. I'm going to scry on their end step, and then I may scry on my own upkeep depending on what I see. I'm going to take this damage for sure. Not interested in trading off my Paradise Druid. Alright. Yeah, I think I'll take this Dragonfire. Not not the best card, obviously, but it does let me scry twice since it's cheap enough. And I do want to kill this Yara so they can't start drawing cards. Would I rather scry a second time or get in 2 points of damage? I think I'd rather scry a second time. If I find Expansion Explosion, it's just going to be so good. I think I just really want Expansion Explosion. So I'm going to get a scry 2 again. I don't think this Frilled Mystic is really necessary. Question is, do I want this intervention? I think I might just not. Because it's gonna look at a lot of cards, to be fair. But only if I spend my turn doing it. I gotta see one extra card off the scry anyways, so I think I'm just gonna put that on the bottom. Alright, fine with that. I missed the stop. I was gonna scry my own upkeep, but not that big of a deal here. Drew another Wilderness Wreck, which means I get to untap my lands, scry once, found the expansion, and I get to untap my lands again, and I should have lethal next turn. I'm not sure my opponent has any way to interact with this, which is why I was digging so aggressively for Expansion Explosion. I know my opponent doesn't have any way to take this off the table. They don't really have any way to interact with me on the stack. So I knew it was just a foregone conclusion. Sure, I'll take one here. Draw this card. Go to my end step. Make some mana. Draw a million cards. Of course, I gotta kill them too, but drawing the million cards is the best part. It's 12, 18 mana, so this is for 14. Boom, boom. On the play. Great hand. Just need to find lands, but we have possible for turn 3 Wreck plus Frilled Mystic. Alright, so the question is Paradise Druid or Growth Spiral. Really interesting spot. If we play Paradise Druid, we guarantee the Reclamation, but we also guarantee that we don't get to Frilled Mystic the turn we play Reclamation. If we play Growth Spiral, we don't guarantee it because we have to find our land in our top 2. But if we do hit, then our Reclamation is followed by a Frilled Mystic, so it's much more powerful. I think resolving Reclamation is going to be good enough such a high percentage of the time that I would rather take the less high variance line here and just play Paradise Druid. Alright, so they're playing Lucky Clover, and we would have hit had we Growth Spiral, but we are not going to worry about that. And let's see if they have a Beanstalk Giant here. They do, so gonna be a difficult game for us. I actually have not played this matchup yet, I don't think. Oh, it looks like they're just the blue-green Clover deck. Interesting. Yep. Okay, so they're building themselves a lot. Looking for Euro, presumably. And they did not hit. And they have a couple 1-1s. Alright. So not the worst. Pretty solid turn on their part, but I think we're going to be able to combat this. Yeah, I'll definitely keep that. Okay, so we have 11 mana on our end step. Frailed Mystic is 4. We definitely want to keep that up. So we could Explosion for 3. Not that powerful. Not that powerful. So I think I'm just going to Castle Vanquishes here. Try to hit more lands. Cards we have in our graveyard, just one, right? Yeah. So hit more lands and set up for a better future turn. I have 2 Frail Mystics here and a card I want to draw on top of my library already, so I'm going to be pretty liberal with what I counter. I just don't want to fall too far behind. Obviously, fantastic card for me to counter. Would do that even if I only had the 1 Frail Mystic, but see what they do now. Ooh. Damn, it's really annoying here. They hit another Edgar Innkeeper. Alright, so now we have 6, 12, 13 mana. So we can Explosion for 5 plus leave up Frailed Mystic. Unfortunately, that is not enough to kill the Tameo. So there's a chance we have to put our shields down. Putting our shields down is really, really scary though. What if I attack both at Tameo? Then they could go block block. But if they don't, like if they double block the Mystic, then I'll have 6, 12. I could do the last 4 and leave up this. No, I'm just going to. I think I'm just going to put my shields down for a turn. But if I'm going to do that, 6, 12, 13, 9, it's possible I should just go face. Yeah, I'm just going to go face here. Because a land plus another explosion will be lethal next turn. So it's for 9. And hopefully, so we hit land explosion, so hopefully they don't do anything that can break this up. We also just hit another Wilderness Wreck too. So I think we're going to have lethal with Frailed Mystic back up next turn, which will be obviously really good. Okay, so they picked up their Brazen Borrower, probably planning to bounce our Wilderness Wreck, but I think we're still going to have lethal. Oh, they get a bounce from Paradise Druid too, so we might not have lethal here actually, because we can't redeploy both wrecks. So a little annoying. but I think we're gonna be okay still. So I'll play one, and I think I'll bounce this because I don't want them to return another thing. Don't play Paris Druid though, or do I want to play Nightpack Ambusher? Nightpack Ambusher is not that relevant right now, so I think I'll play Paradise Druid. Then go to my end step, float a blue mana, and bounce Tameo. And then I can try to counter the Tameo on the way down. So I'm really not worried about any of their creatures, only their bounce spells or fail wishes. Ooh, main deck Mystical Dispute. Okay, so that's fine. But now they don't have enough mana for Fae. Or rather, they could grant it, but they can't do anything after. So it's possible they need to plus into a Brazen Borer. But then I still think we are fine if they do that. So I think we should be good here. Return Mystical Dispute. Alright, that's not going to be good enough. I think we have plenty of mana to play through that. So we go untap land here. Second Wilderness Wreck. And these are 8 mana each, so 8, 16, 20 mana. So we have an explosion for 16, minus 3 for this, 13. Yep, we got enough, 14. Explosion for 11, 11 there. We'll draw 11 cards. Excellent. Awesome. Alright, so blue-green clover. They don't have the red cards. They don't Bone Crush Giant. Besides that, I think it's basically the same thing. I don't have any shatters, which is annoying, but I do have Mystical Disputes and Aether Gusts. How much do I care about Edgewall Innkeeper? I mean, the answer is a lot. But the question is whether or not I need stuff like Scorching Dragonfire. The big problem with that is that Edgewall Innkeeper is basically the only target. So I don't think it's worth it. I really don't like Uro this much in this matchup. They go up the board so much, and it's clunky, bad against Mystical Dispute. I find myself boarding this card out a lot, basically against everything but black-red. Which is why I was thinking that the card is not that good in this deck. Kind of like Road Mystic here. It's possible we don't want too many Aether Gusts. It's a way to. It's actually not even that effective against Innkeeper because Innkeeper's 1 mana. Really easy for them to deploy again. They don't really have too many expensive green cards. So perhaps only want like 2 of those. Brazen Bar is pretty good against Clover. And flying in the air is really powerful in this matchup too. I think I want to shave Frailed Mystic and I'll shave Brazen Bar. Alright, we have Gross Round to Wolf. Keeping that every time. Oh yeah. So we have a premium draw here. Obviously, worse post forward because our opponent's more likely to be able to interact with it. I think I'm going to Growth Spiral here because um, the only way my hand gets pinched by Mystical Dispute is if they dispute the Growth Spiral, so I don't want to give them the opportunity to do that. They have Beanstalk again? They do not. Alright. Fantastic. Okay, so do we Reclamation? What could they have? They could have Aether Gust. So I think the answer is no. I want to keep up this Thassa's Intervention. I can just play the Wolf and step instead. I think they're going to be pretty incentivized to keep up Aether Gust. And that attack means to me that it's even more likely that they have it, so. Alright, Hardcast Mystical Dispute I am a-okay with. Now I will play Wilderness Reclamation. Untap my lands, I have a counterspell up, I have Explosion next turn. I can scry if I want to. So if I scry and they gust, it's a little annoying, but I mean I wouldn't counter it anyways, so it's fine. I actually don't mind this Growth Spiral since I have extra lands. Oh wow, and they're gonna gust my Reclamation on my draw step, so I don't have access to the mana. I'm just gonna be able to Growth Spiral into it, so that's gonna be awesome. If they have another Mystical Dispute, they get a hard counter there, but not too worried about that. So they got a double Fey here. Let them get the first one for sure. Probably gonna get a Disenchant of some sort. Yep. Let's see what the second one gets. So I could fork the Disenchant and kill their Clover. It's Tameo. Oh wow. They didn't return a Nature My Wilderness Wreck? They one other card off actual Innkeeper. But now I get an Explosion for a million, so if I draw land, I get to 12 them. Draw 12. Yeah. I could also just Intervention. I look at the top 5, and if I find another Reclamation, it's really good. And I'm probably going to be tapping out to Explosion just to get the maximum number of cards, so the counterspell is not going to be that effective. Yeah, I think I just take a Scry land and a regular land here. No, I'm going to draw so many cards, I'm going to have more lands, so I think I just take a regular land and a Growth Spiral. Alright, so this Growth Spiral is going to be -1 mana, unless I draw an untapped land, in which case it's neutral mana, so I think it's worth it. Right, we hit Frilled Mystic. So I'm going to says stop on my end step. Then we got to figure out how many cards I want to draw. So 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Alright, so if I do this, is draw 7 plus leave up Frilled Mystic, I think that's worth it. Alright, and they had enough. So I was going to be able to counter their... I probably wasn't going to counter their Return of Nature, and just going to counter their Tameo, and then I would play another Wilderness Rec, plus have Fast Intervention up. But yeah, that'll do it, and great showcase for the deck, I think. I think we drew pretty well. We made some mistakes there, but we noticed them right away, which is what is important. I think this deck has a lot of play to it, so if you're considering playing it this weekend, I would definitely make sure you get your reps in. Try to figure out what you need to prioritize in every matchup in terms of what to counter. But yeah, I've been really happy with this deck. Probably going to play it in the Grand Prix this weekend, and I'm really looking forward to it. So thanks for watching this video. Again, this was Edgar Magalhães with Team Lotus Box, and I will see you all next time.